Now, I'm very excited to welcome back a great sports bettor, podcast host, and good friend of the show, in Mr. Will Hill from the Bear Bets, from VSiN, as well as the Should Have Bet More podcast. You can follow Will on Twitter at not the Will Hill. Will, thanks for coming back, man. Like you just said, it's been a minute. It's like time goes so fast. It doesn't feel like this since March. How you doing?
Good. What's going on? Thanks for having me. It's always fun. I top of my head, I was like, yeah, we talked a couple weeks ago, and then you look back and it's like, well, I think it was Selection Sunday last time you were on mine. And yeah, like you said, time goes by fast, and we're sitting here middle of June. It feels like football's far away. In some ways, it is, but only like 6 weeks until the Hall of Fame game. I think it's the Bears. I forget who it is. The Bears, maybe Washington, like August 1st. So it's not that far away. You get through these finals, you get like an NBA draft, some NBA free agency, a little baseball. You look up, and we're going to be having football on our TVs in not that long. So excited to talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously the HBO show with the Bears on it, again, is going to be coming up soon too. Their training camp show. It's called again, the
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks. That's it. It just escaped me. But yeah, that's going to be coming soon. But you're right. I think, and we're getting to the end here. We're in the finals for NHL, NBA championship, and here we are. It's like, I think as soon as that ends, people are like, okay, it's time to start thinking about football. And maybe some of these odds will change by then, but it's cool that we're getting ahead of it a little bit early here. But hey, man, before we talking about football, NBA finals, is this thing over between the Mavs and the Celtics? I mean, what a terrible performance by everybody except Luka these first two games. What are your thoughts on that?
I thought you were going to say what a terrible postseason it's been, because it hasn't lived up to what we thought it would be. I thought it was really a balanced field, a balanced league with a lot of parity, and you're going to get some great series. The injuries really hurt it. Some of it's just kind of randomness where we didn't get games. Sometimes the games were good, but the series were bad, like Dallas and Minnesota, where all the games are competitive, but Dallas wins in 5. And then Denver, Minnesota, the series overall is competitive, but all the games are 15, 20-point blowouts. So it's been a disappointing postseason. You asked if it's over. Probably. I mean, Dallas winning 4 out of 5 seems far-fetched. I think Porzingis possibly being out opens the door a little bit where, hey, you get one if you're Dallas, and then you're at home with a chance to tie this thing up, and then who knows? But Boston just looks like the better team, the deeper team. If you're just picking sides playground style, the first two for Boston and Dallas, I would say cancel out, but Kyrie has not been good, and Tatum hasn't been good. It's been a strange series. But after that, the next 3, 4, 5 guys are all Celtics. I mean, you're talking about 5 of the 7 best, 6 of the 8 best players all on Boston, with Holiday and White and Porzingis, if he plays, when he plays, Horford. It's not a great Dallas roster. You watch them play these first 2 games. How did this team make the finals? They just don't have a lot of shooting. They don't have a lot of offense, especially if Kyrie's going to play like this. So I was in between. Dallas, I think, needs both of them in Dallas to tie it up at 2-2 to have any chance, then make it a best of 3. I think if Boston gets even a split, it's 3-1, and then you got 5 at home, you got 7 at home. Dallas probably not winning 3 in a row. I just don't think Dallas is getting a split. So I think Boston wins. I was unsure if Dallas would even get a home game with Porzingis. I would say likely out. I think Dallas probably gets 1 here, and then Boston wins it in 5.
Is that one today? I see the odds are going up a little bit, -3 now on Dallas.
I would think so. I never like to pick a team down 3-0. So if you're going to get one, I think for the level of interest in the finals, I mean, if it's 3-0, everyone's just going to turn it off and stop paying attention to game until, unless Dallas came back and forced a game 6 or 7, that everyone will assume it's over. So for the benefit of interest, I would say I hope it's today, just to get some juice in the series. I don't know though. I don't know. I'll pick them tonight. I'll say they win tonight. Boston gets game 4, and then Boston wins it in 5.
Okay. Yeah, and it's almost to the point where it's tough, because I feel like and I kind of agree with you, if I bet Dallas tonight and I lose, I almost have to bet them again, because are they really going to get 4 games swept? It's like that's the time where they should be playing out of their minds. But the thing about Kyrie Irving, man, this dude's got the worst and the best mental aspects, and when I say the best, it was like the way he played against Minnesota. It's like Kyrie comes back. Kyrie looks like one of the best players in the game. And then he goes to Boston, where he is afraid of the crowd. I think mentally he just couldn't do anything. It's almost like he was a massive liability. I think if Jason Kidd goes back in time, he doesn't start him. I don't know. It's just like, I feel like he's hurting the team when he plays in Boston more. Is that fair?
Well, I think Holiday's just a really bad matchup. Holiday has a size to really shut him down. He doesn't have any
Mhm.
space. He doesn't have a window to get his shot off. Everything is contested. He has very few clean looks. So I just think this is a tough matchup. When Boston's healthy, when Boston has
Mhm.
Porzingis, they've got 5 guys on the court pretty much at all times that can shoot like 40% from three and that defend and are long and defend the perimeter. And Luka's hobbled too, which look, he's fooled me a couple times where I think he's hurt, and I count Dallas out against OKC. He looked really hurt, and then he came back and they won that series in 6 games. But Luka's hobbling around here. They've gone at him defensively. Where that's the other thing too. Dallas has played these teams where they can kind of hide some defenders here and there. You don't have to guard Gobert when Minnesota
Right.
out on the perimeter. You can maneuver around that. You didn't have to guard Josh Giddey. Boston, they've got guys you have to guard everywhere. You can't hide any of your bigs. You can't hide Luka. And Boston's just a team where you can't hide guys. And Dallas is a team that needs
Right.
to hide Luka and hide some of their bigs on the perimeter. So this is just a bad matchup here for Dallas.
That's a great point. And I'm looking at first quarter Dallas, maybe it's minus 130. I look at the half and it's minus 175. I'm like, oh, I think I know obviously first quarter, much more variant, but it's just like you guys, Dallas, you got to come out firing here. You got to, and it just went down to 125. So there you go. Somebody just came in on Boston here for the first quarter. I'm going to look at that. Possibly even put a small play for the total game. But yeah, it's one of those. I think it's over. I think it's in 5 games, and I think you agree with that. Gentleman sweep type situation. So probably move on from that. Talk some NFL. Here we are, my man. We got the draft done. It's great about the NFL at this time. A lot of the moves are done, Will. We got these teams. We just got to kind of see what happens in OTAs, a little bit in training camp. Obviously, God forbid, we always get injuries in the preseason. The preseason's less and less games. But here we are, man. The NFL's around the corner. Like you said, 6 weeks. The Hall of Fame game's coming up here. I just want to kind of start general to you. And it's just fun, kind of like just early thoughts. Which teams are overhyped this year? And there's hype teams that I think deserve to be hyped, but who's overhyped?
My radar is always up when these teams, when everyone's kind of picking the same team, and we're not there yet where the media comes out with the Super Bowl predictions, but I can just sense with the way last season ended, the young quarterbacks, I think Houston and Green Bay are going to be everybody's darling. You're going to see plenty of Houston to the Super Bowl. You're going to see plenty of Green Bay to the Super Bowl, and they should have beaten San Francisco and been in the title game. They got a young quarterback, young receivers. I'm always leery of the team that takes a giant leap. It's not always linear where you take one step forward one year and then you take another step forward next year. A team like Houston that was really bad, came out of nowhere, and now they're getting their flowers, so to speak, all offseason. Now they added some players. They added Diggs. They added Hunter. I mean, it's hard not to like the roster. Stroud's obviously tremendous, and maybe he's so good where they defy this, but I just always have my antenna up that these young teams, when they take one step forward and everybody assumes they're going to take a second step forward, I'm not so sure. So I don't know that overhyped is the fair word. They're talented teams, but those are teams where everyone assumes they're going to take a step forward, and I'm not so sure going forward.
Yeah, when I say overhyped, it's always based upon their odds. It's always based upon their number. What we care about as sports bettors, 9.5 juice to the over minus 140. That's hefty. I mean, you got to think about what happened to teams that had an easy schedule to hard. Look what happened to Jacksonville. They had the first place schedule last year in their division and didn't quite finish quite as good. Then you have the Eagles. The Eagles had one of the easiest schedules in the league in 2022. They went to the Super Bowl. Their schedule got harder, especially the last 7 games, and they look terrible, a shell of themselves. They got injured. The Houston Texans, same situation. One of the easier schedules in the league, now going to at-large games at Dallas, at-large games at Kansas City, at-large games versus Baltimore. So I agree with you 100%. Houston was my number one. And you also have to remember the AFC South plays the NFC North. There's 4 possibly challenging games there. Obviously, Detroit depends upon what you get from Green Bay and Chicago. Maybe Minnesota's a little better. Then you have the AFC East, where you have 3 top teams there in the Jets, the Miami Dolphins, and Buffalo. So the Patriots are like theoretically your only pushover there. So yeah, I'm definitely lower on this team than the market. Now, I didn't bet the 9.5 under. I'm kind of waiting for a 10 here. I think we get it. I think the hype continues on this Texans team, and maybe we do get a 10. So 100%. I think the Texans were my number one probably overhyped team. And I do agree with you with Green Bay. I have to wonder a little bit more about Atlanta yet. I do like the Cousins move as long as he stays healthy, but I think they're getting a lot of love like they did last year as well. What about underhyped? Is there any teams that can kind of just maybe being a little bit too ignored and their numbers might be just a tad bit too small, Will?
Yeah, I don't know if underhyped is the right word because these are teams that are going to get a lot of attention. Again, we're still not in that cycle yet where people are predictions. So I don't know that this is that underhypes the right word, but I'll say
Undervalued.
undervalued
Let's
and
change it.
still have some
Yeah,
value.
undervalued is a great
Cincy at
word.
plus 170 or so to win the division, I think is a great bet. Everybody in the AFC has a brutal schedule just because there's so many good teams. There's so many good quarterbacks. Cincy's actually one where you look at the schedule and you say, it's not that bad, where they play a last place schedule, and their last place schedule, I mean, that is Titans, that is Panthers, and that is Patriots. They also have games against the Giants, the Commanders, and the Raiders. Now, look, we're sitting here on June 12th and trying to figure out who's good and bad. Hey, that's an easy game. That team stinks. Who knows? We don't always know, but we can only go by what we think we know. And by what we think we know, that's 6 pretty doable games. Burrow, you figure, is back healthy. You figure the defense, which was bad last year with that good with the good defense coordinator Anarumo, they'll improve. I think plus 170 with that schedule. You figure Baltimore with the guys they lost in the offensive line, losing their defensive coordinator, who everyone seems to like. Who knows if Lamar can stay healthy? Maybe Baltimore takes a step back. I think with that schedule, plus 170 is a great bet on Cincinnati to win the division. I'll also go with the Jets. That was one of my teams last year. I would say I got burned and I was wrong, and I guess I was because it didn't work. But I mean, Rodgers got hurt 4 plays in the season, so we didn't see it. And hey, who knows? Maybe with that offensive line, Rodgers was probably going to get hurt at some point anyway. But they sort of ate their vegetables. They just addressed their offensive line from every avenue: trade, draft, free agent. I mean, they addressed the offensive line, and then they still added the offensive lineman Fashanu from Penn State with the 11th pick, 12th pick. So I think they're going to be able to block better. I think their schedule compared to the other teams in the AFC East, I went through it and I just did a quick exercise of opponents' season projected wins. So the Bills, so you just add up everybody's opponent and how many wins they're lined at. Like, we used one of the books, DraftKings, I think I used. The Bills have an opponent schedule where their opponents are expected to win 139 and a half games. The Dolphins' opponents are expected to win 143 and a half games. The Jets' opponents only expected to win 120. They have a pretty soft schedule compared to some of these other teams. Plus, you look late in the year, some subtle advantages. They play the Rams, a warm weather team in New York, cold weather. They play the Dolphins, a soft, warm weather team in New York. And then you look at the Bills. The Bills have a brutal schedule. The Bills play every team that was in the conference title game last year. Lions, 49ers, Chiefs, Ravens. They also play the Jets twice. They also play the Dolphins twice, and they play the Texans. That's 9 of the 17 games for Buffalo. Look at Miami's schedule. They have the opposite of the Jets, where this, like I said, they're a soft, warm weather team. They lost a lot in free agency. Hey, Tua was healthy last year, but that hasn't been the norm. Late in the season, they have to play in Lambeau in December. They have to play in Cleveland, and they have to play in New York. That's not a team that travels well. So a warm weather team playing in the cold. I think the Bills have a brutal schedule. The Dolphins have a brutal schedule. The Jets is somewhat manageable. I like the offensive line improvement. And look, everything went wrong last year. They got bottom, 1 or 2 quarterback play in the entire league, and they still won 7 games. So them winning 10, 11, 12 games is not far-fetched to me. Getting almost 2-1 on them to win the division, I think, is a good bet. So Cincinnati and the Jets to win the division are my two favorite ones in that category.
All right. Well, Cincinnati, and it goes through Joe Burrow here. They did lose their offensive coordinator, which I'm not sure is that bad of a thing, because I feel like they started this season a little rough, even with Joe Burrow. They kind of come in a little rough the last couple of years, and they just kind of have Joe kind of put the pedal to the metal down the last half of the season. Obviously, he was injured the last half of the last one, but before, when they made the Super Bowl run. So I agree with you there. It's interesting. I look at Atlanta. Maybe they're the team to do it, but are the Saints a little bit undervalued? I don't know. They have a pretty easy schedule here. They lost some. They lost some guys, some older guys. Jameis Winston, obviously. PJ Mustapher on the defensive tackle, which is somewhat big, but they also got offense coordinator Clint Kubiak. So I want to see if he can get this offense running a little bit. Maybe Chase Young actually can stop the run a little bit better this year. They signed Chase Young, pretty big signing there. Lucas Patrick at guard might help out that offensive line, but I kind of look at the schedule and I think, well, maybe 7.5 is a little bit too low, especially in one of the probably the weakest division in all of the NFL. Just depends upon what your real belief is on Tampa and the Falcons. And my other one is, I guess maybe undervalued, a little bit more forgotten about, is the Arizona Cardinals.
I like that one.
Yeah, we have to remember Kyler Murray is an electric player. He can make plays, and they seem to start out the seasons pretty well. Now they're going to have a tough first 7 games, but maybe after that they can kind of get it going. So the Cardinals is a team that I'm not going to bet their win total over until after game 6, maybe, but I'm going to look at them and think that they could be an ATS team, coming in. I really like the Marvin Harrison draft pick. I'm normally not high on wide receivers, but I think, he's the kind of guy that could take the team over the top. And we have to remember this team did really well in the draft the last couple of years. They got some trenches, definitely some offensive line help. Key additions were Justin Jones at defensive tackle, Sean Bunting at cornerback, Bilal Nichols at defensive end. They have some good depth there. Obviously, the draft was good. Darius Robinson, I thought, was kind of one of those 4-3 sleeper edge guys that I really like here. One of a sizable edge guy that can get to the quarterback like a JJ Watt size, So I'm liking that. So I think that they could be somewhat sneaky. So I appreciate that. That you're kind of with me on the Cardinals. Let's talk about some divisions. Starting with the NFC North, is there anything that you bet there or anything that pops?
Minnesota at 10-1, just because that's a lot of talent. It's a really good division. I like Chicago. I did bet Chicago over 8.5 wins. I laid a little more juice than it's out there now, and I think that's one. I don't know if it was you that I was texting about that with, but I just think if you can get 10-1 on Minnesota, you just see it every year where somebody comes out of nowhere to win a division. Pretty much every year you get like a real deep long shot. Last year was the Texans. I'm trying to think of who it was the year before, but it's pretty much a given that every year you get a long shot. So Minnesota with that roster, with Addison and Jefferson at receiver, Flores with that defense, they drafted Dallas Turner in the first round. They got a good home field. I don't love the McCarthy. I'm not a draft. I'm not a Darnold guy, so I don't love this pick. But I just think from a value standpoint, that roster at 10-1, I don't think that's a bad bet for the division, but nothing like that I think you have to bet. Nothing I'm going to pound the table for, because I do think Detroit's really good. Green Bay obviously should have been in the NFC title game, and then the Bears are good. So they're rightfully the 4th place team, but if you're just looking for like, hey, I have a free bet, or I want to take a shot at something, them at like 10-1 at some books, I think is worth a shot.
I mean, those are some long odds, and the Bears haven't proved themselves yet. Caleb Williams, I had him as my number 1 quarterback coming out, a little bit of edge over Daniels. But the truth is that I go by system a lot more than just player. And so I'm a little bit nervous for the Bears. And I am a Bears fan, as you know, but I'm just not quite as hyped on them as someone else. But yeah, I think the Vikings at 10-1 right there, that's wrong in my opinion. I think the Vikings might be a little bit too high right there. I would take them. I'd take them before anybody here. I think, if you're not high in the Lions, I mean, the Lions are plus 150. So I think that's mostly because of the Packers hype here at plus 210. So if it'd be the Lions or the Vikings for me, you can literally make money off both if you do a little sprinkle on the Vikings. So completely agree there. What about the NFC South with the Falcons there? Are you believing in the hype with Kirk Cousins?
No. I mean, they opened at 10.5. I mean, when has Kirk Cousins ever won 11 games? That was when he's healthy and had really good teams with Minnesota. I'm not a believer in Cousins coming off the Achilles, and they really, I don't want to say they wasted a pick, but they took a pick where if Cousins plays well, like Penix is going to help them this year. That's a guy, a top 10 pick. That's somebody that should be helping the team this year. That's not. I don't love Atlanta. I look to fade Atlanta. I don't know. I can't quite get there with the Panthers. You made some good points about the Saints. The Saints were a sharp darling last year. Every week it seemed like the Saints took money last year. I don't love Carr. I don't love the coach. This division right now would be a pass for me. I guess Tampa. What are we looking at Tampa? I can see the numbers, but they're small. Tampa,
plus 310.
That's not bad. If I had to bet one, I'd take Tampa plus 310, almost by default though.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to try to make these numbers a little bit bigger as well for the screen here. But yeah, I'm not taking the Falcons at minus 115. I do like the Saints over the win total at 7.5. But yeah, I agree with you. I would take Tampa for the division at plus 310. What have they done so wrong? And Todd Bowles has really surprised me. I was more down on him before, Will. I'm actually more higher on him now. So I was wrong about Todd Bowles. What about the NFC East? The Eagles at plus 115, Cowboys plus 130. Then obviously plus 800 in the Commanders, plus 1200 in the Giants. I'd flip flop the Commanders and the Giants personally, but I think the Eagles do win it this year. I like their draft. I like what they did in the offseason. So not much for me on this one. What about you?
Yep, I'm always looking at the long shots and, hey, is there something there? I think you can kind of throw out the Commanders and the Giants. I think it's a stretch to think either one could possibly win the division. So, two-horse race. This division has a history of flip-flopping, and nobody wins it 2 years in a row. You're going to hear that about 1,000 times before the season starts. And there's a narrative that the Eagles have passed the Cowboys, and I think that's a narrative I agree with the draft. Now, look, Hurts, I don't know what to make of Hurts because I never thought he was going to be good coming in. I watch him in college. Go, hey, he's just not good enough passer. I admitted I was wrong. He's a really good player. Then I watched him last year and go, maybe I wasn't so wrong. So I've gone back and forth a few times. Can he stay healthy? Is the tush push going to be as effective without Kelsey? I don't know, but that's a good roster. I like their draft. I don't love what Dallas did. Dallas, I don't know. You start to worry. I like the Zimmer addition. Zimmer's a good coach. I think he'll help the defense. Hard-nosed guy. They need a little toughness there. But I think the idea that Philly passed Dallas, I think, is correct. I think it'll be a close race, but I'll go with Philly here.
All right. No, we both agree. NFC West, then. Niners, the obvious favorite, a massive favorite, minus 195. Then the Rams, plus 330. Seahawks, plus 700. Cardinals, plus 1,300. What do you think about this division?
All of the non-Niner teams are interesting. I can't quite pull the trigger unless you're going to lose the quarterback for Purdy for a decent stretch. They're solid enough to get to the 11, 12 or so wins. And I just don't know if these other teams have the upside. Like I kind of like Seattle as an over. I think they're 7.5. I like them as an over. The Rams, that's a solid team, but I just think that the 49ers have an upside and really have a floor, a basement that these other teams are going to have a hard time getting. 195, that's not sexy. It's not like, hey, you're not going to get a lot of attention for giving out a minus 195 winner. You're not going to get a lot of credit for that, but that's one of those ones. Hey, you bet at minus 195. I wouldn't be shocked if you look week 4, week 5, it's minus 300, and week 9, it's minus 600. You say, hey, I wish I bet the minus 195. So if I had to bet it, I would go chalk here.
Okay. Well, hey, I actually like the Rams to finish to make the playoffs, and I took that at plus 100. Trust me, I look at the 330. I'm like, much better odds, but I just don't see them coming ahead of Kyle Shanahan this year, unless obviously injury. The frustrating thing with the Rams is I had that beautiful plus 7.5 under very early in the season, and then they blew the doors off of that one.
But hey, you got an older quarterback who's always hurt, and last year he stayed healthy. So is he going to stay healthy again? I mean, what are the odds here of Stafford staying healthy for 34 games in a row now? I don't know.
All right. Yeah, I disagree with the Seahawks, though. I actually took their season win total under 7.5. Hey, it's our first disagreement. I just with the new coach, the Pete Carroll firing, I'm not big on the new coach. And I just think that it could be a situation where now you see a different Geno Smith, maybe without Pete Carroll in that system there. You see the Geno Smith we remember from the beginning of his career. I do know that they have some talent, especially at wide receiver, but yes. I mean, they're going to lose one of their wide receivers. I'm sure Smith, Jigma, and DK Metcalf are the ones that are staying, but man, they demand the ball a lot. The Seahawks did lose some players, just like everybody. It's a tough division. If I like the Cardinals a little bit, then I probably have to be down on one team. So our only disagreement is on the Seahawks. What about the AFC North? Ravens plus 130, Bengals plus 145, Browns plus 600. Probably. Maybe
there were some plus 170s for a long time out there. And again, shop around, you're going to find some disparity with these numbers. But plus 145, I'd still go with Cincy just because I think they have a much easier schedule than the rest of these teams in the division. Okay. And Pittsburgh's killed by their schedule. Pittsburgh's my favorite under, maybe in the whole in the entire league, the entire market is Pittsburgh under. You just look at the last 8 or 9 games. I'm not the first or last person to think of this. You're going to hear that a lot, how tough the schedule is. It is. It's brutal. They play basically a Super Bowl contender every week from like week 8, week 9 on. And you can tell me, hey, Tomlin always gets to over 500. He always does this. A lot of that is kind of smoke and mirrors. A lot of that is, hey, I don't know, 7-7, and then they play a couple teams at the end of the year that are resting starters or a quarterback got hurt, and they backdoor their way to 9-7, 9-8, and then they get absolutely trucked in the playoffs. A lot of it's a little smoke and mirrors. I think this is finally the year where that doesn't happen. I don't love Wilson. I know you got 2 shots at it with Fields and Wilson, but I don't love the quarterback. It's a tough schedule. I think Pittsburgh's a really good under.
Yeah, I took that right away too. It was one of those situations where I had the show and I talked about, man, Pittsburgh is looking suspect, but I didn't look deep enough in the schedule. Then I'm all of a sudden listening to VSiN and you guys out there. Oh, the schedule's I'm like, oh my God, I got to get to this before it moves. So It moved on DraftKings. It moved on FanDuel, but it did not move on BetMGM. So I took it at plus 100, but now it's definitely juiced at minus 165, but I'd still take it at 165. Will, this is a brutal schedule. And this Russell Wilson and Justin Fields thing is not going to work out well, in my opinion. And what's so funny about Mason Rudolph, and we'll talk a little bit about him later, I think he was really good this last year. I think he finished the season strong for this team, and all of a sudden he's gone. So we have agreement in this division. Let's move on to the AFC South then. Texans plus 105, Jaguars plus 275, Colts plus 310, Titans plus 1,000.
Not a Lawrence guy. I know I've been on this podcast before, and it was early in, it was not the last year, but it was the year before. So I think it was Lawrence's second, maybe third year. I'm trying to think where I feel like I was one of the first ones to go, are we sure Lawrence is a star? I'm kind of questioning how good this guy is. So I'm not a Lawrence fan. I think bust might be strong, but he's never going to be this generational quarterback he was billed to be. Completely overrated. That being said, plus 275, that's decent value. I don't want to lay the basically even money with the Texans. They could come back down to earth. Colts is interesting. I like the coach. I just don't know, can Richardson stay healthy? Every play's a car crash with him. He's good, but he's so physical. It's almost like, I don't know, Shaq in a football uniform, just colliding with everybody on every play. He was impressive when he played. I just don't know, can he stay healthy? Titans to me are a toss out. I think the value's there on Jacksonville plus 275. Still a talented team. I wish they had a little better of a home field advantage, which they don't have much of. But decent quarterback, not a superstar like he was supposed to be, but he's a decent quarterback, pretty good coach, some pieces on defense. I think you're getting almost 3-1. I think that's the value play.
Yeah, the Jaguars. Yeah, I just talked about them. They're the only one I would pick as well. But I also like them to make the playoffs at plus 130. It's a way to fade the Texans kind of, but also be safe if they both make the playoffs or if the Texans still win the division. But I still might take the Jaguars at plus 275. I do have that in my write-up. The Titans have an interesting situation, and there might be a better way to bet them. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. AFC East. Bills plus 170, Jets plus 190, Dolphins plus 200, Patriots 25-1 with the worst odds in all the NFL to win their division. What are your thoughts?
Patriots still missing a zero there. I will go with the Jets. I think at almost 2-1 for all the reasons we talked about earlier. Proved offensive line, a big advantage in terms of the schedule when you line up the schedule side by side. I think the Jets is the play. I think the Jets are going to win the division.
My first bet of the year was the Jets to win the division at plus 240. It's plus 190, so not that much of a difference. I still like that value, and I like the fourth place schedule. You got to love that, Will, right? That's going to certainly help. AFC West, right? Is that where we're at? The Chiefs minus 225, the Chargers plus 300, Raiders plus 1,200, Broncos plus 1,500.
Probably betting against the Mahomes injury if you're taking anybody else. If you think the Chargers can win. You can tell me, hey, you got Harbaugh, you got a really good coach who's just a complete psychopath, and I mean that in a good way, and you've got Herbert, who I think is going to blossom under Harbaugh, but they did lose a lot of their, I won't say weapons, but those guys didn't play a lot to begin with. The Keenan Allens and the Ecklers, those guys were always hurt. Mike Williams, guys were always hurt. So, yeah, you're missing them, but you were always missing them because they didn't play a lot of football. Chargers, it would be Chargers or anything, but I think the Chiefs win. I'm probably not going to play the Chargers. You could throw out the Raiders. You could throw out the Broncos. I think if you want to get at the Chargers, though, your idea with taking the Jags to make the playoffs to give yourself a little bit of an a second avenue to get in, I would just take the Chargers to like make the playoffs. I don't actually think they're going to win the division. Chiefs have won this division, I think, since you were in junior high every single year, and I think that'll continue. I think the Chiefs win the division, barring a Mahomes injury.
It's been a while, my friend. I think that the only bet I would make is the Chargers if I had to, but I didn't. And I agree that the Chiefs are probably definitely the rightful favorite at minus 225. Not so sure. Here's a better way to bet these Chargers anyway. So let's go to the awards here. And why don't we start with Coach of the Year? Because I was just alluding to this. If I was going to bet the Chargers, I would probably take the Coach of the Year. Harbaugh's Coach of the Year, because 9-1 instead of 3-1. If he wins that division, why would you? Don't you think he'd be Coach of the Year by going through the Chiefs? And if you're scared, you can also do a Raheem Morris at 13-1 too, because both of those are much better value than minus 115 for the Falcons to win their division. I think these are the two coaches that make the most sense from a voting standpoint. Am I wrong here?
Harbaugh 9-1 is very intriguing. I'll throw in another one just because sometimes you win this award. There's a few different things at play here. Like, remember when the Sacramento Kings hadn't made the playoffs for forever and they finally made it? The coach got the credit. If Salah makes the playoffs with the Jets, I know they have a talented roster. They have Rodgers. Maybe Rodgers gets the credit, but it's in New York. That always helps with the market, with the voting. Remember, Dable won it a couple years ago when some people didn't think he would. If Salah can win 11, 12 games, win the division, the narrative could be, hey, he held it together. Rodgers is a big ego. He bounced back. The media likes Salah too. Remember that. He's buddies with a lot of, Peter Schrager and a lot of these guys. The media speaks very highly of Salah. If they can get off the drought, if they can get off the schneid, remember, it's been 14 years since they made the playoffs. That's the longest drought in all of sports. If he gets him in the playoffs, I think Salah at 11-1, it's not bad. I'd like a little more, but that's at least the guy I think is live because of the narrative, even though we expect him to be pretty good, which is usually not the avenue to winning this award.
That's a great call. And you've always known that the media goes a certain way, and you're great at reading the media. So that's a great call. That's true. You're right. He's going to get votes, and that's a great point. So solid. I mean, but look what we're looking at. We got 9-1, 11-1, and 13-1 with Raheem Morris. So, you split your unit into thirds, you're going to still do fine. It's not going to be the big payout by betting one, but I'd almost rather hedge by going all three in that
He's
situation.
way down the board. What's Andy Reid? Is that 50-1 I see?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, 50-1 with Reid. And we just assume he's the best coach anyway, right?
Could he get a lifetime achievement? Like, hey, 14, they go 14-3, they go 15-2. There's not a great other candidate. And they say, you know what? He hasn't. I don't think he's won it in a while. I know he maybe won it early in his career. I'd have to look that up. But is there a path where he just wins with? Because there's another way to win this. I mentioned it's either an upstart team or like the Sacramento Kings. You haven't made the playoffs in a while, and you give you that credit. Sometimes you win it with dominance, like when Belichick went 16-0. They gave it to Belichick. I think Harbaugh went 14-2. What was that? 2019. They went 14-2. They gave it to Harbaugh just because he won so many games. If they ever had a home run year and they went, let's call it 15-2 and just say, you know what? The guy went 15-2. How could you not give him Coach of the Year? 50-1. If you have a free bet, a pizza bet, just in terms of the number, I mean, that's, I don't know.
Possible. One of those free $15, $10 bets, whatever that BetMGM keeps texting you every day. So, think about
it this way. What's the adjusted win total on the Chiefs to go like over 14 wins? It's not 50-1. And if he goes over 14 wins, 14-3, 15-2, he's going to be on the short list of like at least the finalist where, hey, at least you have a guy at 50-1 that's a finalist. That's if the Chiefs, I mean, we know they're going to be good, so they're going to have to exceed expectations. But if they just have a dominant season, it's in play, I think.
Anything for comeback player of the year? Obviously, Rodgers the favorite at plus 125, and you got Burrow at plus 210. And this is a tough one for me because I just don't understand the definition of it, and they keep changing it every year. I mean, the year that Geno won it, it's like he came back from what? Not being good? It's not like he was injured.
It's best story. I mean, that's what this is. This is best story. That's really what this is. The word comeback, I mean, it's not a literal definition. I think that's how the voters take it. What's Damar Hamlin?
Damar Hamlin is, oh my God. Are they gonna let him play all year? He is 100. Oh no, it's Odell Beckham. I don't see him on here for some reason. He's not here. He's not on the board for comeback player of the year.
He should be. He
Yeah, he
should be
should
because there could be a narrative, hey, you got screwed last year, and I had Flacco, I think it's 70-1 or something. So I was very happy with the voting. I think the voters did a fantastic job voting for
Oh, you
Joe
hit
Flacco.
Flacco. That's right. You
Yeah, I mean, I
nailed
was
that.
late. Some other people had him 150, 200-1. I just thought, hey, Flacco, there was that, I forget what happened, but I took a shot at a number and it got home. That was very nice. Maybe there's a little bit of, hey, Hamlin couldn't win it last year because he didn't actually play. Part of this award is not just the comeback part, it's the player part. And Hamlin didn't play enough, which I think there's actually some truth to. If he actually makes a team and has a regular role, you could say, all right, now he's a comeback player because now he has a regular role. So shop around and look for Hamlin. I think Hamlin could be one that's off the radar. And again, this last year proved where, look, this time last year, Flacco wasn't in the league. Flacco wasn't in the league until like Thanksgiving. So you can find some good numbers along the way. You don't have to rush to bet this, but I agree. The lack of clarity in this market makes it hard to really wrap your arms around this. But if you can find a Hamlin, I think that might be a nice sleeper. Darnold too is interesting if he gets a shot to start and he just keeps that job and leads the Vikings to the playoffs. Darnold could be in the mix. Rodgers, the rightful favorite. They're telling you don't bet Rodgers at plus 125. They don't want your Rodgers money. They think that's way too short. I don't know. I can't bet that guy at plus 125. That's just too short.
What about like Justin Herbert at 25-1? Or I mean,
his story compelling enough though? Did he really? Well, he had kind of a down year. Then he got hurt. It's not like it's not exactly a Hallmark tearjerker where he completely bottomed out. Like we all assume he's going to bounce back. So I'm not sure. Again, though, back to your point, which is the best one. Where, I mean, you can ask 10 different people at a bar, what's your version of this award? Who would you vote for? Right. Everyone's got a different interpretation. So you might think Herbert, hey, that's a good comeback story. And I might think, well, it's not really a comeback. He's going to be fine. He just had kind of a down year. He got hurt, bad coach. So there's different interpretations, which it makes it hard to bet, but it makes it fun to bet where you can get some long numbers just because, hey, nobody's thinking about this guy, but voters might like it. So it's interesting.
All right. No, I agree. And then maybe the story on Justin Fields was like all of a sudden he passes the ball well this year to guys like George Pickens and, some of those good receivers there. And all of a sudden, like you realize it was the Bears coaching incompetence, which, always is a possibility with the Bears. And then Justin Fields does something. And at 35-1, I find that as maybe a story too. I haven't bet anything yet, but great to talk about. It's like I think pizza only just because the way the voters are is probably the best in this situation. I didn't do anything for offensive rookie of the year, defense of the rookie of the year. Anything there for you?
Not yet. I'm interested in the kid Pearsall, the receiver for the Niners. I've heard rave reviews about him in camp with Purdy, and he was kind of an underrated player in college. Has all the measurables. Just wasn't on it was on a weird team, a weird fit with that quarterback. So Pearsall is an interesting one, but this is a quarterback award, and there's like 5 rookie quarterbers that win the first round. So chances are it's going to be a quarterback. So you're probably talking about dead money if you're taking anyone other than a quarterback. Worthy's going to be Worthy's going to be a popular pick just because of the speed. You figure, hey, he's the next Tyreek Hill. You've heard that a lot. But again, it's probably just going to go to the quarterback who puts up the best stats. So Daniels, Williams, one of those quarterbacks is going to play halfway decent, and that's probably who's going to win it.
Yeah, I agree. And Darius Robinson at 30-1 for defensive rookie of the year is interesting just because he's going to be starting for the Cardinals. And there's going to be plenty of opportunities that they're going to try to get to the quarterbacks there. Geno, obviously, Matt Stafford, who is getting older and is more like a statue back there at times. So I'm looking at that a little bit too. I haven't bet it yet. MVP. I mean,
I put a free bet on for offensive rookie of the year. This is absolutely not going to win, and I probably shouldn't have bet it, but it was a free bet, and I don't know. Cody Schrader at 250-1, the Missouri running back who's on the 49ers. If McCaffrey gets hurt, and he's had a history of getting hurt, all of a sudden you got that player who I loved in college. I know there's some, he's not a burner, but he's kind of a versatile back. He led the SEC in rushing. He put up some great stats in the SEC. You're going to put him in Kyle Shanahan's system. Again, a lot of things have to happen, but if you got an injury where Cody Schrader's the starting running back for the 49ers at 250-1, it's at least interesting, but probably dead money anything other than a quarterback.
I'm looking for it on DK. I can't, so you must have got it somewhere else. That's really interesting. But it's a great call because what does this system do? You see it in Miami with McDaniel. They just pound the running backs and they get injured. You get the guy that's going to be the Christian McCaffrey role. How is that not the offensive rookie of the year? So that's very interesting. And offensive player of the year, I hit that with Christian McCaffrey last year. Tyreek Hill is actually the favorite this year because I'm not sure if the voters would give it to the same guy twice. Maybe they would, but that's interesting. You got Jamar Chase there at 12-1. which is interesting too. So if you really believe in the Bengals, you're looking at Jamar Chase. I think Justin Jefferson, I would not touch at 15-1 just because of the quarterback situation over there. But that's an interesting one as well.
What's
And
Mahomes,
then,
by the way? What's Mahomes for this market?
for offensive player of the
Yeah,
year,
because this is another weird one where sometimes it's just the best non-quarterback. Sometimes the quarterback wins it too. Sometimes it's the second best quarterback. If you go back and look, sometimes this does go to a quarterback. Sometimes it goes to the MVP. Like, this is a strange one where, hey, you won MVP. Why didn't you win Offensive Player of the Year? It's almost like a consolation prize because we know that the MVP goes to the quarterback. So this is a non-quarterback award, but sometimes you can give it to him. I don't know. What's Mahomes?
40, 45, 45,
Not a
45
horrible
one.
bet.
Oh,
Mahomes
no,
has just a monster season, and you have to give him MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, or he's the second best quarterback, and you just give him that consolation. Again, it's Patrick Mahomes at 45-1 or whatever. It's not horrible.
It's not. It's definitely not. And I like the thought process here because this is what this is all about, is the thought process that goes into it. Saquon Barkley could be a candidate if the Eagles are back too. So, and he's 16-1, really not too bad odds. And obviously the Eagles just crumbled last year. Barkley is a fantastic running back. And if he stays healthy, he's going to be in the mix, and maybe Jonathan Taylor could still be in the mix, possibly as well. MVP is the last one. Will, anything there?
They've taken the fun away with this market. All these numbers have shrunk. I've talked about this before. In 2018, Mahomes won this award at like 80-1. Then 2019, Lamar won at like 70-1. And then 2020, Rodgers was 30-1. And they all won this award. So what the book says, you know what? We're not going to give out 30, 70, 80-1s anymore. We know it's going to be quarterbacks. So we're going to take all of these quarterbacks and we're going to shrink the numbers. So they're not giving you anything juicy. I mean, I remember last year, Sam Howell was like 45-1. And it's like, come on, this is Sam Howell. So they're not giving you any more like moonshots here.
No.
I haven't bet anything. I think this is one where you could pick off numbers along the way. And there's so many short numbers. And I think I'm a little scarred because I think I had Purdy was at 22-1 like 3 or 4 weeks into the season. And I was like minus whatever going into Christmas Eve, the Christmas disaster against the Ravens. But long story short, I haven't betted. I feel like a lot of these numbers are shrunk. I don't know if you have anything you'd pound the table for right now, but to me, all of these numbers are just too short. These numbers kind of feel like a ripoff, to be honest.
It's a regular season reward, but it has to be a team making the playoffs. So you're right. I mean, look, these numbers are terrible. I mean, Christian McCaffrey could be arguably the most valuable player at the position last year, but I'm glad that I took him for Offensive Player of the Year because of the way that went with Lamar. It's a regular season award. You have to remember, if they choke in the playoffs, it don't matter. But you got all your playoff guys. Let's just put the first 14 or so teams here. The best you're getting is Tua at 22-1 if he makes the playoffs. Maybe Trevor Lawrence sneaks in at 30-1, but they're plus money to make the playoffs. I mean, you're right. They did take the fun out of this. I'm not touching it. If I had to do it, it'd be probably Trevor Lawrence or Anthony Richardson at 30-1. But I agree with you. This is a tough.
That's a hell of a leap for those guys to win the award. I mean, I know you're getting pretty good numbers, but man, I don't like Richardson. What's he played 4 games in the NFL and gotten hurt? Like, I get the upsides there. What's Herbert?
18-1. He's the one. He was the other one I mentioned. Or I was
horrible. I feel like this way with a lot of guys where I look at it, I could see a path where he wins, and it's enough of a sleeper where it's interesting. But I feel like I need double on all these guys. Like, if you give me Herbert at 36-1, all right, I think that's more fair, honestly, because he's still in a division with Mahomes. He's probably not going to win the division. Like, it's hard to win the MVP. There's 8, 10, 12 really good quarterbacks. It's hard to crack that list. Think about this. If you're Lawrence, you gotta have a better season than Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar, Allen. I mean, you got to beat out some major players. And at like 18-1 for Herbert, I don't know.
Don't disagreement here. You're the best, Will. Where could our listeners and viewers get your great information and media?
Goldboys.com. I'm on VSiN a few times a week. Should have bet more podcast, Fox the Bear Bets podcast. So appreciate you having me on. Usually when you have me on, that means you're getting a text pretty soon. Hey, you're going to come on mine. So usually we do these home and home. So I'm going to have you on soon, but appreciate you having me on. This was fun. Fun thought exercise too. Good to get the wheels turning too.
Absolutely. Nice and early before maybe some of these move, and maybe some of these jumped out to our listeners. So that would be wonderful, Will. Thanks a lot again. And we'll be texting this week.
Sounds good.